right now. Tensions are running incredibly high, and the potential consequences, well, let's just say they're about as serious as it gets.
Absolutely. And this is exactly what The Guardian dives into in their recent article. It's called The Guardian View on Israel and Iran. There will be no winners from an all-out war.
Pretty sobering title, right?
Understatement of the year.
But that's what we're here to break down, right?
Yeah.
Take a deep dive into this article and really dissect why this conflict, if it were to happen, would be a loss for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And not just Israel and Iran, but for, well, pretty much the entire world.
Yeah, exactly. So the article kicks off with this really stark statement, this idea of no winners. But they back it up, they dig into the why.
So walk us through it. Like, what are the specific arguments? What does The Guardian see as the potential consequences for each side?
So for Israel, you're talking about a potential multi-front war. Think about it. Hezbollah in Lebanon with its massive rocket arsenal, Hamas in Gaza, potentially even other groups. Israel's defenses would be stretched incredibly thin. And let's not forget about the constant threat of terrorism, the impact on the home front, the psychological toll it would take on the entire nation.
Right. It's like even if Israel were to achieve some kind of military victory, the cost of that victory would just be astronomical.
Exactly. And then there's Iran. They're already dealing with a really tough economic situation, right? Crushing sanctions. A war would just exacerbate that, send their economy into a tailspin. Plus, you have to figure a prolonged conflict would lead to even further isolation on the world stage.
Yeah, it's hard to see how either side comes out of this looking good. It's like this lose-lose situation, but on a massive global scale.
And that's exactly the next point The Guardian brings up. This isn't just a regional conflict we're talking about here. This is something that has the potential to send shockwaves across the entire world.
Right, like dominoes.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another.
Precisely. Think about it. Oil prices.
Oh, right. The Middle East practically fuels the world.
Exactly. And the article cites experts who are predicting that if this conflict were to erupt, oil prices could easily skyrocket to $200 a barrel.
$200? I mean, ouch. I thought filling up my tank now was bad.
Yeah, well, that's just a tiny taste of what we'd be facing. And that's not even getting into the humanitarian crisis we'd be looking at. Imagine entire cities, major metropolitan areas, Tel Aviv, Tehran, under constant threat of bombardment, families forced to flee, lives lost, millions displaced.
Honestly, it's heartbreaking to even imagine.
Absolutely. And, it's easy to get caught up in all the geopolitical strategizing, but at the end of the day, this is about human beings, about real people whose lives would be shattered.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, this is all incredibly bleak. Are there any glimmers of hope here? Does The Guardian offer any potential solutions?
Well, they do emphasize one key thing, one path forward: diplomacy.
Easier said than done.
Definitely not easy. The article acknowledges that. Decades of mistrust, of animosity, that's not going to disappear overnight. But they make it clear that diplomacy, however difficult, however improbable, is the only way out of this mess.
Yeah. I mean, what's the alternative? The article lays out a pretty terrifying picture if things were to go the other way.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways here. We can't just sit back and assume this will all magically work itself out. We need to be informed, we need to understand the gravity of the situation, and we need to start demanding better from our leaders.
Couldn't agree more. Awareness is key, right? That's the first step towards action.
Exactly, and I think that's a good place to leave it. The Guardian doesn't necessarily give us all the answers, but they leave us with some really thought-provoking questions. Can diplomacy really prevail in this kind of environment? What concrete steps can the international community take to actually de-escalate the situation?
Yeah, lots to think about. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us start asking those tough questions, we can push for a more peaceful future.
I hope you're right.